And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Bavona, joined alongside once again by my co-host Andrew Johnson. As now, Johnson, we are down to the final two teams in this year's MLB season. It has been a very wild MLB year and an even more wilder postseason that we've had. We now know who will be playing in the Fall Classic that will be taking place starting on Friday. For me, I am a little bit nervous. Well, obviously, with a little bit of spoiling, I am nervous as a Yankee fan to see what goes down in this series, considering the opponent that we are facing. But it has been a while for Yankee fans since they've been in a World Series, so we'll see how it all unfolds. But like I mentioned, it has been an unbelievable postseason, to say the least. A lot of dramatics, a lot of big timely home runs for certain teams, a lot of great bullpen work as well, some solid starting pitching, and it's probably now led us to what a lot of people would say to be one of the more anticipated World Series in recent memory because of how, the postseason's been the last couple seasons. It hasn't really been great ratings-wise and viewership-wise. But with the two teams that we have for this year's World Series, it should be potentially an all-time classic, depending on how it goes.
All-time classic is an understatement right now. These are going to be, and again, without spoiling, two titans of the sports battling it out for supremacy. Arguably, the one and two when it comes to all-time baseball franchises.
Right.
One's the undisputable number one, and the second one, if they don't think they're number two, they're definitely in the top three or four.
They're definitely number two.
You think they're definitely number two?
In terms of pennants, they have the top two pennants in baseball history. So it's by far,
there you go.
Definitely top two between these two teams.
Some people like floating the Red Sox in there sometimes. You never know.
If I had to pick a third team, it's like the Cardinals. Red Sox,
Cardinals up there too.
Red Sox are recent memory, sure, but the Cardinals, probably historically wise, probably would be that third team. But these by far are the top two, teams you face. I mean, this is going to be now the 12th time they faced in the World Series, and the first time since 1981 that this World Series has happened. So a lot is on the line. There's a lot of history, and in baseball history that goes back years and generations ago when it comes down to this World Series matchup. But like you said, we'll break that down in just a little bit. But without going, fully spoiling what happened, let's dive into what happened in the AL and NLCS. And let's kick it off by going in order of how each series ended. And we'll start off with the ALCS between the New York Yankees and the Cleveland Guardians. Now, this was a series, Johnson, where you, in fact, saw it yourself in person on Monday night, a very windy night for most parts. I was at MetLife Stadium for the Jets and Bills game. You were at this game. You said it wasn't too windy, which is not the worst thing, especially for a baseball.
On the lower level, it was windy. I was up in the 200s.
Yeah.
Not windy over there. I heard in the 500s, it was windy, and in the 100s, it was windy. So take that as you may.
If you're in the middle part of the stadium, you were going to be fine that night. So, going by off of what happened in the series, the Yankees playing the Guardians, game one, a very solid performance from Carlos Rodon in this, kicked things going for the Yankees in this one. Rodon going 6 innings for the Yankees, Juan Soto and Giancarlo Stanton continuing their playoff heroics, both having home runs. And Yankees taking game one, especially with the way their bullpen has been as well this postseason, a very solid 5-2 victory in that first game of the series. Game number two, we saw the Yankees once again, it was a little bit of back and forth affair between the two teams. Aaron Judge finally, broke free in this postseason, having his first home run of the playoffs. The Yankees got to the Guardians bullpen after Beebe was struck early with some early runs in the first and second inning. The Yankees were able to take game number two and go up into Cleveland up 2-0. Then game three, Johnson, is where this series was wild to start off with. First two games were not really memorable games. After game number three is where the series got memorable. Game number three, the Yankees having a 5-3 lead going into the ninth inning. It was one where it was Cleveland had the lead going into the eighth inning. The Yankees would get a huge 3-run homer from Stanton. They would get Judge to get the tying home run, a 2-run homer to tie the game at 3. Then Giancarlo hit a 2-run homer to give the Yankees a 5-3 lead going into the ninth. And that's kind of where everything unfolded for New York, unfortunately. Luke Weaver gives up a 2-run homer Jojoensky, Noel. That ties the game in the bottom of the ninth. And then in the bottom of the 10th inning, a walk-off two-run homer from David Fry off of Clay Holmes gives the Guardians a 7-5 win. And for me, Johnson, I was pretty much out of sorts after that game. I had really did not know how to feel after that loss. A game in which the Yankees should have won now falls to Cleveland. They make it a 2-1 lead for the Yankees going in to Friday night. Now, Friday night was a very memorable night for me. I had a wedding for my cousin, and having to watch game number 4 while at the wedding, Johnson, was not fun to say the least. A lot back and forth, having to try to see how I could watch it. Streaming it on the phone wasn't easy as well. So didn't really make for a memorable viewing party for that, but nonetheless, it was a great wedding overall. And this was another great game between these two teams. The Yankees pretty much controlled the way going into the 7th inning. Things unraveled in the 7th inning for the Yankees. They gave up 3 runs. They were able to get out of a big jam to keep the game 6-5. In the 8th inning, a costly error gave the Guardians the tying run. It brought us to the 9th inning, tied at 6 apiece. The Yankees would get 2 runs in that top of the 9th inning. Bullpen was able to hold on in the bottom of the 9th, and they took a 3-1 lead after winning game number 4 by the final of 8-6. And then Saturday night, you and I both watched this game at a very local establishment that we love to go every Saturday. And let's just
Maybe
say
not
that
every Saturday, but
mostly every
we go
Saturday.
very a lot. Yeah, we
Mostly
go
every
very a lot.
Saturday. Whenever
Yeah.
we can possibly we go there.
Yes.
Shout out Russell. We know he listens to the podcast. A frequent guest host for us as well, sometimes during our MLB talks. But man, what a game this was on Saturday night. Guardians jumped out to a 2-0 lead. The Yankees really were struggling hitting in this game. And then once again, Giancarlo Stanton was the guy that really broke through for the Yankees. Another big timely home run for the New York. Ties the game in the top of the 6th inning. It was tied throughout the entire game. Both teams had opportunities after opportunities throughout the entirety, going into extra innings. And one of the biggest at bats you'll see, probably, people describing as one of the best at bats you'll see in your entire lifetime. One of the biggest home runs in Yankees' recent memory. Juan Soto, the big, trade acquisition for the Yankees in the offseason. 3-run home run in the top of the 10th inning gives the Yankees a 5-2 lead. They would be able to hold on to that 5-2 lead in the bottom of the 10th inning. The Yankees, with that win, clinch the series, clinch the American League pennant. They'll be now heading to their 41st World Series in franchise history, their first World Series in 15 years, back since 2009. And the biggest thing for the Yankees in this series, Johnson, was they got to the Guardians bullpen. The Guardians bullpen was, considered to be one of the best bullpens in all of baseball, especially Emmanuel Clase, who a lot of people consider to be the best closer in baseball. And that's where the Guardians' downfall was in this series for them against the Yankees. The Yankees really got to their bullpen. The Guardians' bullpen pretty much was overused after their long series with Detroit. And that's what helped propel the Yankees now to their first fall classic in 15 years. And now 4 wins away from, finally getting that monkey off the back. I mean, it's not really, fun to say as a Yankee fan. I know a lot of other teams have been wanting a world championship, but the way that the last couple of years have gone with the Yankees' recent, bad playoff history with the Astros, the Yankees really needed this one, and especially in a playoff format where they were expected to win after Houston got eliminated and Baltimore got eliminated. They needed to get it done, and they got it done, and now they're in the World Series upcoming on Friday.
Yeah, the Yankees have met all expectations. I want to point out a couple things here, and had a couple predictions that I thought were going to happen, and some of them partially came true. Some of them really didn't come true. Uh, Even though Aaron Judge he was batting 170 here, he still came up clutch in a couple of moments here, but he also really disappointed, and I mean immensely disappointed, because after Juan Soto would do something amazing, you were like joking around, like, okay, well, now it's okay for Stanton to ground out, and that's exactly what would happen.
Yeah,
We know Giancarlo Stanton was the MVP of this ALCS.
Yeah.
4 hits, 4 home runs, 7 RBIs, 5 runs scored in 5 games. So he pretty much was hitting a homer a game. I think
what's
the
a
one
funny
game where
stat?
they lost, they did not homer. He did not homer, and was that game 2?
No, he
I
did.
forget.
Game three, he did home run. Game 2 was the
That
one
was
he did
game
not.
2. Game
Yeah.
2. Okay.
Yeah, he's played. I think he's played 8 playoff games against Cleveland, and he hasn't hit a home run in every single game against the Guardians. But he has 8 home runs in those 8 games against Cleveland in his playoff history with the Yankees. So that just goes to show you how big of a bat he is. And in recent memory, especially for the Yankees, like there's let's face facts. When they first acquired Giancarlo, everyone was not of the majority of liking it. Obviously the year they got him, he won the NL MVP the year before. The year prior, everyone was excited for him and Judge to be the two pillars of that franchise, and he just had really bad regular seasons every single year. But when the postseason comes around, that's when Giancarlo shines the brightest, and it really showed in this series. I mean, that many home runs. He had one, keep in mind, he also had the big home run against Kansas City to clinch that series as well. He was huge for the Yankees, and he's been huge so far in this postseason. And now they're hoping that he's huge once again going into the World Series. But as you mentioned, they're also going to need Aaron Judge as well. They can, they've gone this far without Judge being a big part and then winning so far this postseason. But they really need Aaron Judge more than ever if they want to have a chance to get that first championship in
Yeah.
15 years.
So I said he would pick up a little bit, which is fair. He picked up just a tiny bit because, he was hitting at one point 100.
Yeah,
He was
it was
hitting,
a very low bar.
Point .1. So he wasn't doing that great. So he raised it just a tiny bit here. We mentioned Stanton, how phenomenal he's been. Juan Soto, if Giancarlo Stanton did not exist, Juan Soto would be the MVP here. Batting 370, 7 hits, 3 home runs in 5 games is just ludicrous. He had.
This is why you get him. This is why you trade for him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that had a multi-hit home run game during a pivotal game for them to go up 3-1 and never really look back for that series. And also hitting the I don't want to say the walk-off, but the go-ahead. He hit the go-ahead run.
Yeah.
Go-ahead home run, I should say, that brought him home in that 10th inning in let's say overtime in extra innings. And I said 2 other things that would happen here. Stephen Kwan was going to come back down to earth, which he did, only batting .238. And Lane Thomas, those were their 2 guys right here.
Those are the 2 guys I was worried about the most going this. Not even, Jose Ramirez is a phenomenal player, but I was, the way that the first season series had gone for Cleveland, Thomas and Kwan were a huge, big factor into how Cleveland won against Detroit.
Yeah, and I said that they were going to cool down, and then that's exactly what happened. And that's why they're not standing here in the postseason.
It's a good testament to the Yankees, pitching as well, because that's been a big factor from this postseason. Yes, they had their moments in this series
pitching here too,
but yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I want to talk about the starters. Carlos Rodon, who was the unsung hero of this series because he went 2 games here and gave up 3 runs for 10 innings. I know the second start wasn't that great, only really going for 4 and I think 4 and 2/3.
He went 4 and 2/3. Yeah, he did
4 and 2/3. So that wasn't really great. But in the game 1, he came in, he was lights out. He had it's just no more than you could really ask for. Yeah, he had 9 strikeouts that first game. So he came up, 9 strikeouts. He did exactly what you wanted to. And we have to talk about Garrett Cole once again.
Yeah, not a great start of game 2.
Yeah, he's waking up with kind of egg on his face right here, and it's not been great because he got blown up again.
You know what's funny about Garrett Cole? I've noticed a trend with him in the playoffs. He always doesn't do great at Yankee Stadium, but when he's on the road is where he for some reason he just shines brighter. Like he's just better statistically on the road. I don't know what it is about Yankee Stadium in the playoffs. That's really where he doesn't really do his best. And thankfully for him, that the Yankees won't be, I guess for him wise, they won't be at home on Friday for Game 1 of the World Series. But I've noticed that trend for him the last couple of seasons. It's really been not a lot of great starts at the stadium. Most of his best starts in the postseason since he's come to the Yankees have been on the road. So
yeah, I mean, if certain guys are road warriors, which is not a bad thing to have, you want him. Then again, you're gonna want him to start Game 1 against the Dodgers because he's gonna have ample amount of rest.
We're going to need him more than ever.
And listen, they all did a great job here. But again, Stanton, Juan Soto, and Carlos Rodon are kind of sweeping up the mistakes of the other guys.
There were so many unsung heroes for the Yankees in this series. Gleyber Torres has been phenomenal this playoff in the leadoff spot for the Yankees. Anthony Volpe's been hitting phenomenally as well. He's batting 7th or 6th on the order. He's hitting around 300. He's hitting around 300 for that series.
To be exact, Anthony Volpe during this 2024 ALCS batting 350,
Yeah.
6 hits in 5 games.
Anthony Rizzo
He
came
had
back from his injury. He was pretty good as well. I think about over 400. I think he hit for the series. Not
One
great
thing I will say
defensively, but
is
still.
Volpe had the Yips game 1 and he had the Yips game 2, game 5.
Right.
So in the starting and closing game, he wasn't that sharp. But in the middle, when you're in the meat and potatoes of games, those pivotal games, to go up to 3-1, he was great. He was phenomenal.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
only
considering that it's only his second year in the league, too, keep in mind, like, he's still a very young player, and he's getting this moment in the biggest stage of the season, and he's really delivered so far for this team. And I think another guy that also needs to shout out is Mark Leiter Jr. I know, there was a point in the series where he had to get added to the Yankee roster because of an injury to Ian Hamilton, and he had to pitch in that game on game number 4, where the Yankees had the 6-2 lead, and it was then 6-5 because Clay Holmes had given up a couple runs, and he got out of the inning. And if not for that bad error in the next inning, he would have kept the game 6-5 and would have gotten the win in that game. And then he pitched a solid performance in game number 4 and in game number 5 as well. So he was used a lot by the Yankees in this postseason, and that's considering the fact that he hadn't pitched in 2 weeks after the regular season that ended. So, like I mentioned, a lot of unsung heroes for the Yankees after this ALCS, and hopefully, for my
and
sake, they can transition it over to the World
and
Series.
listen, they've been doing the heavy lifting. These other guys have to these stars of the team have to do they have to do their share here.
Yeah,
Anything else would be malpractice at this point.
they need the rotation to be lights out once again. And I think another thing is they need them to go 5 or 6 innings in each start. Because
We
we
do.
just saw what happened, unfortunately, for the Mets in their series with the Dodgers. Some of their starters were not able to make it past, a couple innings. They had to go to the bullpen early, and that's really where the Dodgers are just a very disciplined team. So you cannot allow them to have those extra base runners in terms of walks or errors. The Yankees cannot afford to have that in this series with the Dodgers. And I guess that will segue into what happened in the National League Championship Series between the Dodgers and the Mets. Now, let's face facts. The Dodgers we know are just a juggernaut. They on paper is one of the best rosters you've seen in recent memory, maybe of all time. Who knows? And it showed in a good portion of this series. A fun stat about this series, Johnson. There was not whoever scored the first run of this series pretty much won every single game. The only time that did not happen was in game number 6, where the Mets had scored the first run, and the Dodgers took the first lead change of the series, and they were obviously able to win that game. But going break by each game, Dodgers took game 1 easily, 9-0. Flaherty, was phenomenal in the start. Kota Senga was a little bit out of control in terms of location and just gave up a couple big walks and some hits early on, and the Mets just did not have their stuff in that first game. Game number 2, we saw Mark Vientos with a grand slam. Francisco Lindor had a leadoff homer. Mets win that game 7-3 in a Dodgers bullpen game, which we've seen a couple times this postseason. So it shifts the series back to Citi Field for game number 3. That's where the Dodgers once again were able to roll past the Mets. Good pitching as well. Their bullpen was phenomenal. And unfortunately, the Mets just were not able to get any big hits in this game. A very solid start from Walker Buehler. Gives the Dodgers an 8-0 win. They go up 2-1. They then take game number 4 on Thursday, 10-2. Once again, seeing Ohtani and Betts just doing their big work in this series, as well as guys like Tommy Edman and Max Muncy and Kike Hernandez. And again, the Mets just, despite the 10 hits they had on the board, they just were not able to hit with runners in scoring position, which was a big problem for them in this series. They fall in game number 4, 10-2. They did make this series interesting in game number 5 on Friday. They win 12-6. Pete Alonso hits a 3-run homer in the first inning. They were able to get to the Dodgers. Jack Flaherty, who pretty much handled them in game number 1. They really got to him early in that game, and they were able to get a 12-6 victory to keep their season going. But unfortunately, as of last night, as of this recording on Monday night, Dodgers jumped out to an early lead off of Sean Manaea, who had a very solid start in game number 2 against the Dodgers, but in this one, was just not able to go the full distance for the Dodgers for the Mets, in this one. Gets taken out early. They have to go to the Mets have to go to the bullpen early, and that's really where the game kind of unfolded from there. Edman gets a 2-run double in the first inning, then a 2-run homer in the third inning to open the game up to 6-1. The Mets would cut the deficit to 6-3. But that's pretty much as close as they were able to get in this game, as the Dodgers win game number 6 in this series by the final of 10-5. They win this series in 6 games, 4-2. They now go to the World Series for the first time since they won it back in 2020. It's their 22nd World Series appearance, and it's now setting up a matchup between them and the Yankees for the first time since I mentioned since 1981 that these two teams will meet in the World Series, the 12th overall matchup in the World Series for these two teams. And as we know now, Johnson, unfortunately, the Cinderella run for the Mets comes to an end. But if you're a Mets fan, a lot of things to look forward to going into next season. Probably one of the more funner seasons the Mets have had in maybe franchise history. It did come out to an abrupt end. They were hoping maybe they could just continue this run, but a lot of bright shining stars coming out of this entire season, and with a big potential spending spree that they might go into the offseason with, the Mets have a really good chance to get back here at this point in the season next year and maybe go even further and win a World Series.
Yeah, I saw a headline read: "Millions lose faith in God as Dodgers Yankees move on the World Series." So
Yeah.
to me that was funny as a fan of neither of these teams. It's just a funny, obviously a parody headline because obviously you have to label
Yeah,
satire nowadays
you have to
because
ask
God
you have
forbid.
to ask certain people how they feel about this series. Some people might be happy, some people might be for the nostalgia of baseball, might be like, oh yeah, Yankees Dodgers, that's not bad. But if you talk about recent memory between these two teams, they don't want any part of this World Series. They're probably going to really hate having one of these teams come out on top with the World Championship.
Yeah, I mean that is what it is though. You don't get there's no crying in baseball.
Right.
Sometimes you don't get what you wanted. And it's not like the WWE where if you complain enough, you
Right.
get what you want eventually. It
Right.
doesn't work like that here, and it's just something that I mean, it is what it is. It sucked for a lot of fans, sure. I mean, I feel bad for Mets fans because they had me believing maybe this is really their year for a second here,
I really thought
and
after they won Game 5, I thought the series was going 7. I really
I
thought they
thought it
were.
was too
I thought
because
it
of
was
that
going
bullpen
to.
game. But
Yeah.
I do want to point out a couple guys here. Pete Alonso, batting 273, 6 hits, 6 games. Not more you could ask for. Lindor batting 300 again through 5 games.
Vientos was
Um,
phenomenal again.
Vientos was great.
He
His
had some big
OPS
home.
was really good
Yeah,
because he had big runs. He really didn't get many hits because he only batted 222,
most of
but
his hits
he
were home
hit
runs.
really. You're right. He got big hits and he got clutch hits. So that's the factor that you really can't measure right there. Just looking at stats traditionally, and Tommy Edman was the NLCS MVP. However, listen to these two stat lines. Mookie Betts batting 350, 9 hits, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs for 6 games. Ohtani, 8 hits, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs and 9 runs for 6 games, batting 364. Those two guys did not win MVP because
Max
Tommy
Muncy
Edman,
too.
yeah, I mean, I hadn't even mentioned Max Muncy, but Tommy Edman in 6 games batting 407, 11 hits, a home run, 11 RBIs.
hmm That was.
How can you even compete with that? How's that even
Remember,
fair?
remember, we spoke at the deadline and said this could be a really good move for the Dodgers, getting him from. I think he was on the Cardinals still at the
He
time of the
was.
trade. And I said that this is, he was injured at that time of the season. They were going to use him as a DH until he was fully healthy. And now he's fully healthy. He's now overtaken that spot at shortstop, which is good for the Dodgers because they were able to move Mookie Betts back out into the outfield, his normal, his obviously normal position. And I mean, this is where, as a, watching this as a Mets fan, you have to be like, I don't want to say upset because
Just
I
got to
think
tip your
you
cap.
I think you knew that this was going to be a tough series. The fact that you got to 6 games, I think you have to be very commemorative about and say to yourself, listen, we were 0-5 to start the year. We were 11 games under 500 at one point. Everything looked like we were done. We had to literally win on the final day of the regular season to make the playoffs. We were down to our last a couple outs against Milwaukee, and we had to fight our asses off against Philadelphia to get to this spot. And the Mets were able to do that. And they got to this part where, they jumped out to an early 1-0 lead against the Dodgers in Game 6. And who knows if, if Manaea doesn't have, unfortunately, as bad of a start in this game, who knows where this goes for the Mets. I think, like I mentioned, their bullpen, and mostly in particular Phil Maton, I know Mets fans are really upset with him. His entire postseason run was really bad. But him giving up that home run in the third inning was a big difference maker in this game. He gives up the home run to Will Smith, and that's where everything kind of went haywire for the Mets in that game. Because if that home run does not happen, Vientos hits the home run the next inning. It's a one-run game right there. It's 4-3 Dodgers. So who knows how the game goes from there on? But like you mentioned, it's kind of how we mentioned. It's a what-if scenario. You really can't look too much into it. But like I mentioned for the Mets, I mean, they have now a good opportunity in the offseason to be going all in, is which a lot of people expect them to do. Questions of free agency in terms of, guys like Pete Alonso, Manaya, and Severino are free agents. Will they bring them back? I would assume so. They're going to be in the market for a top tier pitcher, a guy like maybe Corbin Burns, Max Fried, maybe. Obviously, they'll be in the Soto sweepstakes. We know how that's going to go. But as a Yankee fan now going back into this series with the Dodgers, I mean, watching this series with them against the Mets, it does concern me a lot because there's really no weak spot in this Dodger lineup. And they are just so disciplined. You can't really force them to chase pitches, which is a very big Achilles heel for the Yankees most times. So the Yankees pretty much, for me, have to be on their A game. They cannot afford they were able to squeak by Cleveland and Kansas City because of some pure lucks for some of their at bats in some of their games, but that's not going to happen against this Dodgers team. They're going to make sure that they get this done. And when, I guess, what a lot of people would say would be their first official title in how many ever decades. I think this is their second World Series appearance in like 30 something years, because we all know, or the third World Series appearance, and because they lost to the Astros that one
What
year as
the
well.
Mickey Mouse title?
Yeah, they lost to the Astros and the Red Sox, but yeah, the as you like to call it, the Mickey Mouse title in 2020. This will be their first official, I guess for most people, their first real World Series title if they were able to get it done against the Yankees. And as a Yankee fan, I know the series is going to take a lot out of me. I know it's going to be very strenuous, and it really could go 7 games, which I don't know if it does or not, but I know for a fact it's going to have me on the edge of my seat for the entire 1 to 2 weeks, however long it takes for the entirety of this run. But any final thoughts on this NLCS, Johnson, before we go into the final mushing hour of this MLB season?
Let's go into the mushing hour.
Okay.
I want to point out that I've called 4 series with the correct score correctly.
Yeah, you
So it
have.
went
That's been
4,
impressive.
5, and 1. So like 5 series I got completely wrong. 1 series I got the winner right, and then 4 series I got the winner plus the amount of games, which is crazy.
All right. Yeah, that's very. I'm stunned.
That is even though that's below 500, it's 40. It's
No, I mean,
45% technically, or 40% technically. Um, it is insane because your return on value, if you had tailed those, you'd be up 8 units right now, which is
yeah.
fantastic.
I've gotten 2 right. I thought the Yankees game was going to go one more game against the Guardians. Thankfully, for my sake, that was not the case. I've gotten 2 correct series. That pretty much was in the divisional series. And I've gotten 4 series wrong, and 4 series I picked the winner right, but not the amount of games right. So I've had some bad luck in terms of, trying to get how many games each series will go. But I've at least somehow still picked the winner for that entails. But like I mentioned, it is the final mushing hour of this MLB season, and for the first time, I think, since the new playoff format, Johnson, is the top 2 teams in each league that will be playing in this year's World Series. So no more of that, they have the quote unquote bye week or whatever, the bye in the first round, so they don't have to play. They get a couple of days off. These 2 teams were able to avoid all that talk. The Dodgers obviously were 1 loss away from the Padres from being eliminated. The Yankees, they won pretty early in their series, but they did not make it easy in each series against Cleveland and in Kansas City. And now these 2 teams will meet in the World Series for the first time in a long time, the 12th time in their franchise's history against each other. The Yankees lead that series 8-3, so the Dodgers will look to get back another win. They won the last time these 2 teams met back in 1981, so they'll look to win it once again here in 2024. So, Johnson, what we're going to do is we're going to be picking the winner of this series as well as giving our World Series MVP pick. We do have the odds with us, so we'll give our takes on who we think will win the World Series MVP. But I'll let you take the floor first. Who do you think is going to come out on top this year and win the World Series for the Yankees and the Dodgers?
So I said earlier that the Yankees are playing up to expectations, right? That was the terminology I used. And I also said the Dodgers have not played up to their expectations because their expectations for everyone were to win the whole thing. With that being said, I have 4-3 Dodgers. Dodgers in 7.
Okay. And then who's your World Series MVP pick?
That guy that they advertise all over the place, you might see like you get notifications that he's gonna be batting in like 3 or 4 hours. I think you might have heard of him, Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
Maybe this is me mushing him. Listen, I've been really good so far, so maybe this is me
That
mushing him.
I have to say, like, as someone that was watching, if you were a Mets fan or even the Padres fan in the previous series, having to watch that graphic on Fox saying like, "Oh yeah, by the way, Otani's like 3 batters away from batting," that's so annoying. I get it. He's a spectacle in the sport, considered to be the best player in baseball right now. But
Probably
you
in
don't
modern history right now.
you don't need to advertise it like that. Like you just don't. We get it. He's coming up soon. We don't need that. You don't need to tell the entire world that. And I feel bad for Otani in a sense because people probably hate him now because of how
Oh,
the media has
he
been
has not
treating him.
asked for any of this. He has not
Right
asked for one word of this.
now, going back into this series as a whole, I mean, there's so much rich history between these two teams. We know that if you're Rob Manfred, you're loving this because you're going to have the two most prestigious franchises in baseball history meeting in the World Series. There's going to be a lot of money entailing for this series because of, guys like Otani, because of the Japanese market. You'll have guys like Juan Soto from the Dominican Republic market. They're going to bring in so much money for this entire series that it's
And of
going to,
course, the two largest markets in the United States, LA and New
right,
York.
exactly. And, you know, there will be a lot of revenue for this series. There'll be a lot of viewership for this series. So it's going to be a fun one. I know this will be a great series no matter what. Like I said, it's probably going to take years off of my life, but considering how this one's going to go. But nonetheless, it's probably going to seem biased, Johnson, just because my team's in it. I'm still gonna go with it. I just want to see it happen. I'd rather not see Dave Roberts and company win a title because it would just even if the Yankees weren't in it, I would rather not the Dodgers win it. That's why I was rooting for the Mets to make the World Series. I would have rather had the Subway Series. So, nonetheless, I will go with the Yankees also in 7 games to win this World Series. I do think as well as agree with you that this will go 7. If the Yankees are going to win this series, they're going to need their starting pitching to be the key difference maker in this one. And you know what? Why not? Because he's a big free agent in the offseason, Johnson, I'm going to go with Juan Soto to win the World Series MVP. I think if you want to, you've already increased
Oh,
your
he's
market
playing for his
value.
contract.
You've
He's playing for
already
a contract.
He's already increased his market value for what he's done already this postseason and for what he did in the regular season. He's probably on the verge of getting a $700 million contract, in my opinion. Maybe 6 right now, but he's really making that case for 700 mil. If he wins the World Series MVP, he's gonna get $700 million in the offseason from some team, most
Yeah,
likely
I
the
agree.
Mets.
Give him $1 billion right now.
And I've said to you, you know what? If the Yankees were to win and Juan Soto was able to bring a title to this team, if he went to the Mets, I would not be upset because you know what? You were able
You
to
got
get
your value.
we got our value out of it for one season. We got the title out of it, so we appreciate what you did. And I wouldn't be upset if he went to the Mets to try to help them win as well. Now, if they lose and wants to release the Mets, I won't. I'm not going to fault them for getting his money, but at the same time, I'm going to be really upset because it's a lost season if you can't win the title with the way Soto and Stan have been this postseason, the way Judge was in the regular season. I'm praying he does better in this postseason run, but the Yankees difference maker is going to come down to their starting pitching. If you look at the two teams, they have the best rotation right now compared to the two because the Dodgers rotation is very injured right now. They've got to take advantage of those bullpen games as well for the Dodgers. They're probably going to have to run with it 2 times at least in this series. And if they can get the guys like Jack Flaherty and Yamamoto, they've got a really good chance to win. But that's easier said than done. I think the way that everything has gone, the good thing about the Yankees, Johnson, for me is also this is probably the most balanced lineup they've had in recent memory out of all the postseason runs they've had in the last 7 years.
Oh,
It's
by
very
far.
balanced
It's
from
not even
top to
close.
bottom. There's a lot more speed they have on the team as well. Guys like Jazz, John Birdie, Oswaldo Cabrera, Jason Dominguez. They have guys that can run the bases. Now, they've been very bad running the bases sometimes in this postseason, but they have the speed to be capable of maybe getting a couple stolen bases on the Dodgers if needed be. But like I mentioned, they got to play their A game. They cannot have a game like they had in game 1 and game 2 against Cleveland where they kind of sucked and they kind of just snuck by and were able to win because Cleveland wasn't able to take advantage. The Dodgers are going to take advantage if the Yankees make mistakes. They cannot afford those mistakes. So for my sake, I'm hoping the Yankees play their A game. I'm going to hope that they win this championship. And I got them in 7 with Juan Soto winning the World Series MVP and improving his market value for this upcoming offseason, which should be a very memorable offseason to say the least. But that is going to do it for our final mushing hour of this MLB 2024 season, Johnson. A very memorable MLB season. We'll be recapping the MLB year one more final time once this series comes to an end. But any final thoughts on the championship series as a whole and what you're looking forward to the most going into this World Series?
I'm looking for some good, clean baseball. None of these teams have been accused. I don't know if I accused of cheating. I combined the two words. I'm looking forward to some good, clean baseball. There's going to be hopefully no controversy. I'm expecting the streets of New York to be flooded every single game. I want to see people out at restaurants, bars, going over people's houses. I want for the next 2 weeks, or at least the next 10 days or so, that we talk about baseball. I know there's a lot of sports that have been coming up. We have the NBA. We're in the middle of the NFL, NCAA. We have college basketball, but let baseball steal the show for just a little bit longer. That's what I want. And especially being in New York, where we're kind of a baseball town already. We're not really a football town. We're not really a college football town. Maybe a little bit of basketball with the Knicks being back. We're really a baseball town. So I just hope for New York's sake that this goes on for a little bit and it really boosts the local economy. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, the baseball has really taken over the last couple of years, especially this season with the way the Yankees and Mets season has gone, and them considering that they got this far in the season, and then they could, like I mentioned, the Yankees are looking. I know the Liberty just won last night, but they're looking for the first championship, and God knows since the Giants won back in 2011. The Liberty winning last night was the first title that New York has had in God knows how long.
So yes and no. And I'm glad you brought this up because
I know we probably might bring it up in the NBA discussion as well, but
because it's not actually if you remember New York FC, I'm not a New York FC fan. They won a title in 2021.
I forgot about that, right?
And I want to say this right now: there was no ticker tape parade for them, so that's all I'm gonna say.
All right. So let's see if we get a ticker tape parade for the Yankees this year. That's all I can hope for. I wasn't able to make the one back in 2009, so I'm hoping that I could see my first ticker tape parade this upcoming potentially November, but it's because I would imagine the series could, at least for my
question. The last time this happened with the Giants in 2012, probably. That's my guess.
At least yeah. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a fun World Series no matter what, and I'm hopefully for my case that it ends with a championship. If not, it's going to suck. But at least they got over the bump of not being able to make the World Series, keep getting eliminated in the ALCS, and they were in the Fall Classic at least this time around. But hopefully they can get it done because I don't want to see a Dodgers championship parade. That's going to really sting if that were to happen. So we'll see what happens in the next couple weeks with this World Series between the Yankees and the Dodgers. But for us here on the All Gas No Break Sports Show, that is going to do it for our second to last episode of this year's 2024 MLB season. The next time we will be live for the MLB season will be the World Series recap when the Yankees and Dodgers series goes final. Yankees being the Guardians at 5, the Dodgers being the Mets in 6. They will now meet in their 12th World Series against each other. For the first time since 1981, these two teams will meet in the Fall Classic for a chance to win a World Series championship. This is David Nicholas Savona, joined alongside by my co-host Andrew Johnson with the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week, and let's go Yankees.